There have been some remains found, and as of right now when I am filming this video, we don't know who they belong to. So this is Crystal Rogers. She was 35 years old at the time that she went missing, and also a mother of 5. Her parents are named Sherry and Tommy, and she grew up in Bardstown, Kentucky. And this is a pretty small town. It's known to be a very quiet town, and Crystal really valued family and loved her children. She actually had her first kid at a pretty young age, and she always had wanted to be a mom. Crystal was married at one point, and it really didn't work out, so she had to rent a house for her and her kids now that she was a single mom. This is when she ended up renting from this guy named Brooks Houck. So Brooks was a landlord, and soon after meeting, the two of them ended up dating each other. They never got married, but they moved in together and they had a son together. His name was Eli, and at the time that Crystal went missing, he was 2.5 years old. So Brooks seemed like an okay guy, but eventually something started to stick out to them, and that was that Brooks wouldn't treat Crystal's other children that weren't biologically related to him with the same love and care that he did for his own child. Not only that, but he would treat them almost as if he wanted nothing to do with them. So jumping back forward in time, July 3rd, 2015. On this night, Crystal and Brooks were planning to have a date night. Crystal's other children still had decent relationships with their fathers, so they actually went to their fathers for the night. They were actually going to take Eli with them on their date night, but they didn't want the other kids to be jealous of this, so they said that he was going to be staying home with a babysitter. That day was normal. Crystal actually had been working with Brooks, but at some point during the night, Crystal's mom, Sherry, got a text message from Kaylee, who is Crystal's daughter, and she had asked if she had talked to her mom at all. So Sherry called her, and Crystal didn't answer, so she just went ahead and left a voicemail. Sherry's other daughter, Brooke, tried calling Crystal, but at that point her phone was off, and that's always very, very concerning. So right away, Sherry and her husband Tommy went into the police department and filed a report that Crystal was missing. Now what's super weird is on the way to the police department, Sherry happened to cross paths with Brooks. Of course, she asked him, "Have you seen Crystal?" And he just said no, but was very casual about it, like didn't seem concerned at all. Brooks said that the last time he saw her was the night before, that she was at home on her phone playing phone games. She told him she was very worried and that she was headed to go file a police report right away, and he just kind of was like, "Okay, sounds good, whatever." And he said that he didn't panic or really think too much of it because, according to him, sometimes Crystal would get angry with him and go stay at her cousin's house. However, Sabrina explained later on that Crystal had only come over a few times when her and Brooks were having fights, but she never stayed the night. She always went home at the end of the night. So Sherry continued on to the police station, and Crystal's brother also joined them. His name is Casey. And while they were at the police department, Casey got a call from Crystal's ex-husband's son, and he claims that he may have seen Crystal's car on Bluegrass Parkway. They drive to this highway, and sure enough, it was her car, but Crystal was nowhere to be found. And it had a flat tire, and what's really scary is the keys were still in the ignition and her purse was still in the car. There were black marks on the road from the tires kind of skidding. However, none of the tires were anywhere near the point of completely blowing out. Like, she could have still driven for a while. She didn't have to stop because of the tires. This just did not seem like a situation that she would have left. It almost seemed staged right away. Also, her family noticed that the driver's seat was not in the position that it normally was in. It was moved, so the bottom part was pushed back and the seat was actually sitting straight up, like she would not have driven like this. Maybe she wasn't the one driving the car when she went missing. On July 5th, they released a bunch of information to the media, and that's really where it started to pick up traction. They put this big sign up near where her car was found on the highway. They put little signs all over town. Dozens of volunteers came out to help search, except for there was one person that never helped with the search, and that was Brooks. Those who knew the couple were already starting to kind of put the picture together in their heads. They said that Brooks could be somewhat to her, was very controlling of her, and a lot of people claim that she changed a lot once she had gotten together with him, that he had forced her to change. And then on July 8th, Brooks goes into the police department to do an interview. Brooks stated that the night before she went missing, he, Crystal, and baby Eli drove about 15 miles to Brooks' mom's house around 7 p.m. and they refer to this house as the farm. Brooks said that when they got to the farm, they went to feed the cows and that he lit a fire to burn some waste like he always does. At one point, their cameras actually picked up Brooks leaving the farm and then eventually coming back. According to Brooks, he had left to go get more feed for the cows, but the police don't believe this. Brooks also claimed that he, Crystal, and Eli all took a little walk around the farm, but this is really weird because at this time it was cold, it was raining, and it was really late at night with a baby. So police automatically questioned his story. Like, why did you have a young child with you out this late at night? I mean, most kids have bedtimes, but he said that Crystal was a night owl and they usually did stuff like this late at night. Brooks said that they got home, they went inside. Crystal wanted to stay up a little later and she was gonna play phone games, and that was the last time he saw her. He then goes to bed and he woke up with Eli in bed with him. Like he said before, he got up at 8 the next morning. Crystal wasn't there. He thinks that she's over at her cousin's house. So he and Eli get dressed and they're gonna go back to the farm. According to him, he had called Crystal twice to see where she was and she didn't answer. Later that night, Brooks went to a family gathering like nothing was wrong. And this is after running into Sherry and her telling him, hey, I'm gonna go to the police department and file a report. So they continue on with the interrogation and eventually Brooks gets a phone call. He picks it up during the interrogation. They said it was fine and it turns out to be his brother Nick. Now what's weird is Nick, his brother, is a police officer and he starts telling him on the phone that he should get out of the interrogation. And he actually told Brooks that he thought that the police were trying to make him look guilty. A few days later, on July 10th, they also ended up doing a pretty extensive and much bigger search all over the area that Crystal was last seen at the farm, and that's Nick's mom's house. So that's also starting to look strange that it's their property. Also, on that same day, some witnesses came forward and claimed that they saw Nick move a strange item out of his car and into his mom's car. On July 12th, a massive search took place at Melody Lake, which is a little closer to where Crystal lived and the surrounding areas over there. They even brought in professional divers to search the lake. Now, Crystal's family has brought up the belief several times that they think that someone her at the farm and that her body was then dumped in the lake, and they haven't found anything. However, it's really important to note that the cadaver dogs actually have responded multiple times in the same spot. So it's possible that her remains are in the lake, and Crystal's family thinks that they are. Eventually they get Nick to come in for an interview on July 15th. This is when they confront him and they tell him that within 2 hours of him and Brooks being on the phone that day, the two of them were then seen on camera driving to the farm. And when police asked why they were driving to the farm together at night, Nick said that he can't remember anything. And it turns out that Nick had actually taken a cop car to the farm. And so they took that car in and had it tested, which a luminol test mostly is there to pick up but really any bodily fluids. And when they used it, they found that the whole trunk was covered in bodily fluids. And another thing that was very odd to police was that a fire extinguisher that's normally in the police car was missing from Nick's squad car. Police then started suggesting to Nick that maybe Brooks had an altercation with Crystal and possibly had reached out to Nick for his help in covering it up. I mean, he's a police officer. And Nick immediately shut that down, said, absolutely not. I did not have anything to do with this. Brooks didn't do anything. But then at the same time, he claims to not remember anything from that day. So they asked Nick to take a polygraph test and he agrees and he fails it. Again, this doesn't prove if someone's innocent or guilty. Like I said, polygraph tests are super unreliable and that's why they're not often, used in court. But the biggest part of the test that he failed was when they asked, do you know where Crystal is? He said no, and it said that he was lying. But Nick said that the police were crazy, that this was a witch hunt, and this was a huge red flag for police. I mean, this was a police officer. He was acting so paranoid and so suspicious. On October 16th, 2015, the sheriff went on TV and stated that Crystal was presumed dead. And they also made the decision to fire Nick from the police department for interfering with the case. Brooks never got charged with anything, and months turned into years and nothing had come forward about Crystal. There's always things that the police don't want to tell the public in cases because it could jeopardize their case. It's an active investigation. One weird thing that the police did though was they gave Crystal's car back to the family when that essentially could be a crime scene. So at one point, a private detective named Dwayne Stanton started working on the case with the family. He looked at the car and noticed that there was no fingerprint powder residue. He claims that that could mean that the police didn't even dust for fingerprints before giving the car back to Crystal's family. Dwayne also said that it doesn't doesn't look like there was luminol testing done on Crystal's car. The police only took one fingerprint off of the car. And this is very weird, but some people have brought up that I guess in the state of Kentucky, you can only use 10 pieces of evidence per case. Wow, I had no idea about that. So basically their family felt like the car was just not processed correctly. So they went ahead and brought in their own experts to test the car. The first thing that they noticed was that there was a bunch of junk in the car, things that just should not have been in there, things that should have been moved out by the police before they examined it. Tommy really stepped up and became sort of an investigator in the case himself. He himself looked at a bunch of surveillance video around town. He searched all over the internet for leads, talked to so many different people. And by the fall of 2016, I guess Tommy was starting to feel like he was starting to put the pieces together. At this point, they even created a group called Team Crystal to really hone in, and they were determined to find answers until something really tragic happened. On November 19th, 2016, Tommy had plans to go hunting. He had been hunting in this specific area for over a decade, and not long after they got there, Casey and Brendan were just sitting in the car when suddenly they heard. Trenton was freaking out. He called Casey and told him that his grandfather had been, and he died right there on the scene. And at first people really did think this was a hunting accident, but her family knew right away there's no way that this was an accident. They said that he had been hunting in this area forever, and people know that he goes there, and that other people, including Brooks and maybe Nick, would have known that he hunts in this area. It seemed as if he was and someone staged it to look like a hunting accident. The area that they hunt in is surrounded by this wall of trees, and they said that there was an area where there was almost a hole cut out in the trees, like someone had made an area for them to set up and from far away. There were marks in that area on the tree that showed the kickback from the. And not only that, Tommy had actually said that he felt like someone was stalking him. He had mentioned this multiple times, and he had even installed a camera on the back of his car. Trent said that he and Tommy were just walking, and that Tommy had bent over to look in the little viewfinder thing on the. I really don't know. And it was then that he was from behind. It seems that Tommy was getting a little too close to figuring out what had happened to Crystal. Tommy had kept a bunch of files, so the family luckily had access to pretty much everything that he was working on. They had videotapes, addresses, organized documents. Now, they never actually showed that stuff to police because they believed that they could do a better job of figuring this out on their own. They definitely have not had confidence in the police. And so one of the tapes that Tommy had in his stash was Walmart security footage of Crystal. It was 4:36 p.m. It was July 3rd, and this is the last official footage of Crystal. And it turns out that in a bunch of the videos that Tommy had in his stash, there was videos of this white car that kept pulling up at the Walmart. And after tracking it back, they kind of figured out there's a chance that this could have been Brooke's mother's car, Rosemary's car. Tommy had actually announced that he was looking for this white car on Facebook, and right after that, Rosemary sold her car. Investigators actually said that they believe that this white car could have been used to move the body, but that Rosemary is not a suspect. So they ended up finding that white car that belonged to Rosemary. It turns out it was a Buick, and it had been sold into a dealership. They retrieved the car and they did testing on it, but it's not clear what they have found. If they found anything, it has not been made public yet. Back in February of 2016, the family had received a letter from an inmate, and it said, "A while back, I was in Oldham County Jail in a holding cell, and I overheard another inmate say that Crystal wasn't in Bardstown." He also went on to talk about an area called White Mills. Crystal's family actually tried to go visit him in 2016 to talk to them for themselves. And when they got there, they found out that he was moved to another prison. So as far as I know, to this day, they have not talked to him. I guess eventually their investigator, Dwayne, talked to the inmate on the phone. He said that his cousin, the one who knew Crystal, said that there is this garage at White Mills and 62. That's the cross street. And he says that he was told that Crystal was taken there, she was up there, and then she was burned along with the building. And then not only that, he said that once his cousin told him this, he was. And not only that, fire department records showed that that garage was on fire multiple times, actually. Now that's really weird, and also strange that this inmate knew about all these things. Also, all of those dates are after Crystal went missing. But even with all this information from this inmate, there's still the possibility that he's making it up. No one can confirm that he's telling the truth. So now let's get into the most recent update that has happened in the last month. So like I said in the beginning of the video, remains have been found, and it is possible that they belong to Crystal. On July 23rd, a landowner discovered bones on the Washington-Nelson County line in a washed out creek bank along the side of Beech Fork River. I guess these remains were just exposed from the side, so people definitely instantly got their hopes up that this could be Crystal and could bring that closure to the family. Then on August 6th, the FBI came in, which is huge. They have so many more resources than the regular police department does. And as soon as they got there, they immediately executed 9 search warrants. Nick's house, Brooks's house, and then their mother, Rosemary's house, the one with the white car. And in addition, the IRS is gathering evidence in a number of locations in neighborhoods and a storage unit containing Crystal's belongings. So everyone wants to know if those remains belong to Crystal. It's been huge news. Everyone's on their toes. They said that the process takes a really long time. It's now been 4 weeks. I actually thought those results would come back by now when I planned to do this video a few weeks ago. But they said that it's the DNA extraction process that's taking so long. But we do know that they are female and between the age of 24 and 82, which doesn't help that much. But just the fact that it's a female and that this person was found close to Nick's and the farm and all of these locations that Crystal last was seen, it seems like there's a good chance it really could be her, and I really hope it is, so that their family can finally get some closure and possibly pursue justice now. And also I just hope that this family somehow gets justice in the end, because something clearly happened to Crystal. She did not leave. I do not think she was caught up in, I don't believe in any of that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Brooks did it. And there are signs all over their town that says Brooke Houcks is the only suspect, and he is. I think Nick helped him, and I think Brooks did it. And that's my personal opinion. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a great day. Stay safe, and I will see you next week.